he was just a businessman. And he came to me and said, look, now we have been talking very much about death and dying, and my problem is suicide. He was very open. And he was not ashamed to tell it in front of the group. I have been really trying to commit suicide. Then I said, okay. And I told him, I asked him, what was the last technique you used to try to commit suicide? Because, of course, from the point of the therapist, it's very important to talk about acceptance of the other person. And then he starts to tell me what he did was actually, he said, I had a very brilliant idea, because I had tried it so many ways and never worked. And what I did is that I put all my business in order. I made my everything clear to my wife, and that my children would have no problem, no one. I paid all my debts. Everything was perfect. And I knew how I would die. I would simply walk into this, how's the name in English where you melt the iron? It's a special name for it. Foundry, exactly. I will walk into the foundry because their temperature is at 1,600 degrees. And then I just jump in, my body melts, I have letters to everybody, so everybody has no problem with my death. I say, so what happened? He said, when I prepared everything, it was a very beautiful day, the sun was shining, and 10 o'clock, I walked to that place. But when I got to the bridge, where they use on top of this foundry to clean it sometimes, say, I will go to the bridge and I will jump. Very simple. But when he starts to walk into this, to close to this place, he said the heating was so much he could not control. He starts to faint. So he needs to come back, and he was very frustrated. So, and he said, what can I do? Because in reality, I don't want to die. And I asked him further, how did you start to get the idea of dying? Then what happens is that this man, since he was 17 years old, he was very interested in the spiritual matters. And all gurus who comes to his town, he would go to visit. All techniques of meditation, mantra he could get, he would do. So to his town, come an Indian Swami, was teaching a technique of meditation, and he went there, and the technique was he should go home, and every day, 20 minutes, he would ask himself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And he says it's a very good technique, because so you start to discover that you are not your ego. But he was very diligent, too diligent. So he starts to do this not only 20 minutes, the whole day. Whole day he starts going, who am I, like a. And he says after a couple of weeks, one day he was walking from his factory to his home, and everything starts to get dark. He went into his library and sat on a chair, and he said everything starts to get dark, and he thought he was sick. And then sadly, things change. He felt he starts to grow, starts to become bigger and bigger. And then he thought, now become crazy. And he starts to became as big as the room. And then he starts to grow outside the room and becomes bigger until he was in the whole of the universe. At this moment, he felt very happy. So he was having what we call transpersonal experience. He felt he was the universe. And he got into a state of ecstasy, of bliss. Then he got out of time. And then when he came back again to this reality, here to the ordinary reality, he looks into his watch, and he was very surprised because only half an hour had come. And then when he looked around to his library, he found everything very ugly. He said, oh, the other place. How horrible. I want to go back to that space of the universe. But then that was far away from him. He looked at his family, he lost his interest in his family, in his job and everything. Life had become very great for him. So great that he starts about to kill himself. There came his suicidal tendency. Then I asked him to lay on this mattress and recount to me, with closed eyes, his experience of going into the foundry to commit suicide. And then he was very tense, telling me, now I'm walking and doing this. And when he come close, I say, now you're going to imagine that you are able to jump and kill yourself. He said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, but now you must do it. So I forced him to somehow to commit a psychological suicide. And then he jumped into this fountain. When he jumped, you would see his body on the mat just jerking like that, and then stay very limp there. Then I asked him, what's happening now? So everything was in his imagination. He said, now I have died. And say, what are you seeing? He said, I'm floating above this place and I can see everything there. And then he goes through these different stages until he comes to this space where it's very much light, it's this beautiful sun. Then I use this special technique for him coming back. And when he come back, integrate his experience. So I asked him, how are you feeling now? He said, I'm feeling very well. And I asked him, what do you feel about death now? He said, I'm not afraid of death. And I asked him, would you like to commit suicide now? He said, no, not at all. There was a lot of professional people, psychiatrists around, and they asked me if they could ask questions to him. I say, if he agrees, of course. Then they start to bombard him with questions. And one of the questions they asked him, they say, well, why don't you want to commit suicide anymore? Before you say, what so much? He said, because I discovered there's nothing wrong with my body. So my body is perfect, nothing wrong. And I feel very happy now. And what I did, I tried to follow this case, which I followed during the next 5 years. And during these next 5 years, he didn't try anymore to commit suicide. Or he told me he just sometimes would think about it, but when he thought about it, he would go back again to that experience. And this is what we call the psychological ego-death reverse, which is the most powerful experience in transpersonal psychology as preparations for death. Now, I tell very briefly now about a couple of more techniques. And those techniques is what we call in transpersonal psychology journey to past life. There is this techniques with the Tibetans use, which goes through those 8 stages of death, which Professor Hopkins told you for a while ago. It's a very, very powerful technique. And there is a Tibetan technique which is called Chir, which is the always in Tibet used to use, which go to meditation in a cemetery. And I tell very briefly, I think time is going, right? Inviting the demons to eat their own bodies. And then is a technique of dream yoga, which is used in Tibetan Buddhism. And the technique of the Tongani. Now, from all the techniques which I gave to you, certainly is the most powerful is the last technique, and I want to finish now just reading to you a citation of the foreword of a book about death and dying. The book's called Death, Intermediate Stage and Reverse in Tibetan Buddhism, and it's by Laji Rinpoche and Jeff Hopkins, who was here. That's the foreword of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He says, to overcome the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, desire, hatred, and confusion must be overcome. The root, in turn, is ignorance. The conception of an inherent existence of persons and other phenomena. External medicines alleviate superficial suffering, but cannot cure the central problem. Internal practices, such as resorting to specific antidotes to desire and hatred, are more helpful, but the effects are temporary. However, if you want to destroy ignorance, the root, then all will cease
of the art course. Thank you.
The respondents to Dr. Matos' talk are Dr. Nancy Black, who's a psychiatrist at Triple Hospital. She also has an MA in Tibetan Studies from the University of Washington, and Dr. Ramon Lopez Reyes, who is Jungian psychologist trained in Zurich, who has a PhD from the University of Chicago, and has a private practice here in Honolulu. He has also studied Eastern religions in India and Nepal, and he also told me he was a professional soldier for 22 years in the infantry.
We're going to try to keep to the time schedule so that I'll mention the story. We're going to try to keep to the time schedule so Mama Richard can start at 11:30, so I'll be brief. To paint in broad strokes for the purpose of illustration, the way I was thinking about our first two speakers is Professor Hopkins talked about the stages of death, sort of helps us to die well. Professor Matos has talked about why to prepare for death and given us some exercises and illustrations of how to do this, partially with the emphasis on how to live well. As a student and now a professional in another capacity, I have found that the process of living well can be confusing. And what is a tool that can sort of get us literally sort of out of our chair today and home and have lunch and get the groceries done? You know, what is something that gets us through the day? And from the Four Noble Truths, the fourth Noble Truth describes the Eightfold Noble Path. The Eightfold Noble Path of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. It's a way to orient moment to moment. As our last speaker said, we are already in a state of living and dying moment to moment, the point instant of every day. It's also a way of practicing for the very profound moment of death that comes at the end of our lifespan. That's a personal aspect. A professional comment comes from the privilege I've had of working with 3 different patients in the setting of an adult psychotherapy group. All were elderly, each in their own way had to face their deaths. Again, in broad strokes, they did this differently. My role was to help them face what they could, not to give my own point of view, and not to make them do something they were unable to do. Hopefully I wasn't a foot thumper, as Professor Hopkins talked about at the foot of his bed, although I have been in that capacity also. But the one person that stands out most clearly in this group was the one who, from her Southern Baptist viewpoint, could look her life straight in the eye, the things she felt that had failed, the things that needed attention, and said, I'm going to die, turned to her family as Professor Hopkins and said, gather round. This was a year ago. She expected to die imminently. She is thriving currently. The other 2 had different choices and different responses, and the senile psychosis to which you referred, which we also, I think, would sometimes call dementia, was what faced one of the other patients who had much more of procrastinate. I will do it tomorrow. And I think her experience was quite different from the first woman's. I use these illustrations in no way, please, to malign my patients or to bring their personal experience into the public forum, but only in a sense of, I think that illustrates what our different speakers have said.
Thank you for stimulating presentation. Perhaps the most stimulating was asked to come and be prepared to say something, which then allowed me to ask myself if I prepared a mind for that, and to see what within me would come up, because that question had been asked in me many, many times, as in all of us. If I have one main response to say about preparing the mind for the time of death, I would say to myself and to others, get in contact in the way our culture does it. All cultures prepare the mind for death. Sometimes we may say we in the West are not in touch with it, and that may be true, particularly now. This led me to look at my experience as a soldier. A soldier is prepared for death. Historically, or in an archetypal sense, a warrior would be, if he died in battle, would be given one of the high heavens that he would go to. So his death was assured in a way that we perhaps could say in Jungian psychology, the way of individuation, or in Buddhist of enlightenment. We do not live in that kind of society like the Nahuatl or the Aztecs, but the brave warrior would go to the third heaven, which is pretty high in the Nahuatl. As we broke out of it, we in the West, and I'm looking now at the United States Army, we had the issue of nationalism that allowed then the preparation for death. This was your country, right or wrong. And so the soldier can go to battle with the feeling tone or the preparation that his country would now honor him, and we call them the hero. In Vietnam, where I served 3 years, it was quite different. There I felt that the success I could have with my soldiers to prepare them for death, and I never prepared them for death. Like we're talking here, preparation for death. But there is something that you prepare them for. You can call that development of the military mind, the development of discipline. But I also would say it was calling on the altruism of the human so that he could face the moment of death with a meaning that he was serving his unit or his body. Death will press on us, constantly press on us. You mentioned the fear of death, very strong. The archetypes are always upon us. As a union analyst, I have worked with a couple of people in their death. I use dreams, and the world of archetypes appear, particularly more so at these moments when there is the collective archetype appearing. I would say to myself, and I can share this to you for what it is worth, if we want to understand death in its truth, and not cultural truth, in its truth, we somehow would have to then understand and feel, more so than understand, feel the archetype of death. There are 2 layers of archetypes, and that is the primary matriarchal layer and the later patriarchal layer. The primary matriarchal layer is death is not to leave the earth. Death is a recycling of energy to stay in the earth. The later patriarchal symbols that has made death into dark and black, the deathly wound, where in the primary it is the white lady, it is the bone, the white bone, it is the owl. It doesn't have that terror. In the patriarchal archetype, what we then have is leave the earth. And if you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you will see there, don't go back to the womb, because this would be a failure. In the patriarchal, then we have the individual energy that then has its permanence. And so I may say to us, in our fear of death, do we bring that fear of death into our death? See? Because if we have a religio-cultural statement of the meaning of death, and the leadership of that cultural religio is too one-sided, like the patriarchal, we must be very careful of those interpretations of the archetypes and the manifestation of those archetypes to see if indeed they are closer to what the archetype is about. May I just close now and say that I, being brought up as a Catholic, no longer function as a Catholic, but understand the tremendous truths of Catholicism for the dead. I am a psychologist now, and I say there are two axes. To get rid of the fear of death, we must form the first axis, ego to self, higher self. And that is to get the ego out of center stage, allow the self to surface. Now, when we can do that, we must activate the second axis, and that is between the self and the divine center, or the God center. And then we can get the personal self, or this life, historical life, out of center stage, so that we can get the divine center into our center of existence, whatever that may be. I thank the invitation to make a few comments. It was, in my own opinion, probably the most meaningful thing I've done in the last 2 days, so think about this. And thank you for speaking so I can make some response.
We have only about 2 or 3 minutes, so we don't have time for too many questions, so we can have a few. Any questions from the audience? Comment? Okay. If there are none, I guess we can go on to the next part of the program. Next on our program is the chanting and explanation by the Venerable Lama Karma Rinchen of the local Dharma Center, entitled Transference of Consciousness at the Time of Death.
First, I'd like to welcome all of you and say good morning. I'm already Professor Hopkins and Professor LeoMatos have explained a great deal about the Tibetan approach to death and dying. They've already said so much, in fact, that I don't think I have much to say. In addition, however, since they have covered the topic very broadly, I would like to summarize it in brief. The two scholars have studied the text very extensively. I myself have been a practitioner of these same techniques in Tibet. So I would like to share with you a little bit of my personal experience with these teachings. So according to the Tibetan view, the time preceding the moment of death, that is to say, this human lifetime, is something very brief and fleeting. By contrast, future lives, the lives that we will experience in the future after the ending of this short lifetime, are very long. Therefore, the important thing that we need to do in this lifetime, in this brief lifetime, is to prepare for the time that comes after our physical death. Now, this particular lifetime that we're experiencing now is just one, is just singular. Whereas the lifetimes that we have to face in the future are innumerable. We will take one body after another, one rebirth, time and time again in the future. So even though we may have as a goal to achieve happiness in this one single lifetime, in fact, the better choice would be to use this lifetime wisely to prepare for happiness and our well-being in future lifetimes. Therefore, in the Tibetan perspective, this one single lifetime is not so very important. What is very important are these innumerable lifetimes that we need to face in the future. Therefore, all of us need to realize what is really important. In order to prepare for our death wisely, we need to learn to distinguish between those things that have importance and what is irrelevant to this process. So in fact, a lot of the things that we value in this lifetime, such as our possessions, things that we're very attached to, and also our loved ones, our near and dear ones that we have a lot of attachment for, in fact, all of this will go out the window at the time of death. There are more important things to be concerned with. So in fact, we should place these irrelevant things, these possessions, not at our feet, because that will draw our attention to our feet, to the lower part of our body. Instead, we should place things that are important to us on the physical level, such as our prized possessions and our prized loved ones toward our head. If we ourselves are dying, if it's someone else who is dying, again, we should place the things that are important to them toward the head of the body rather than at the feet. So this is what to do before the person dies. And now I'd like to tell you what should be done according to the Tibetan tradition at the moment of death, when the person has died. He would like to recite some of the prayer that is done at the actual moment of the death of someone being to death. So this is the advice that is given to a person at the time of death. And it embodies, it incorporates the teachings that are referred to in the Tibetan tradition as hoa, or the transference of consciousness. And the word comes from the verb to transfer, such as to move from place to place. So what it refers to is that we're moving from this life to the next life. And the consciousness is to move from the place where it is presently abiding in the physical body through one of the 6 orifices. And the ideal is to transfer the consciousness to a pure land. So as he was reciting, and you heard him say the word pek, that is the time at which the person reciting is trying to help the person transfer their consciousness to a higher state. So if the consciousness were to exit from the lower parts, that is the anal orifice, then the teaching is that the consciousness would transfer to a hell rebirth. So the prayer says, do not go down, go up. Now if the consciousness should exit from the secret organ, that is the genital area, then the consciousness for the person, or the consciousness, would then take an animal rebirth. So again, the prayer says, don't go down, go up. So if the consciousness were to exit from the mouth, then the person or the consciousness would take rebirth in the animal realm, or the hungry ghost realm. So the prayer says, do not go down, go up. That's also considered one of the lower rebirths. Right, so these 3 rebirths, the hells, the hungry ghost, and the animal rebirth are considered the 3 unfortunate states of migration. And if the consciousness takes birth in one of those 3 unfortunate states of migration, it will undergo many sufferings, many painful experiences. If the consciousness should enter from the ear, this orifice, then it would take rebirth in the demigod state, or the state of the asuras. Again, if the consciousness were to exit from the nose, it would take rebirth in a human state of existence, but that is still part of the wheel of samsara, or cyclic existence, so that is also considered less fortunate. If the consciousness were to exit from the eye or from the back of the head, then it would take rebirth in a long life God realm. So again, at each of these 3 possibilities, the prayer says, don't go there, go up. If the consciousness leaves from either the ears, the nose, or the eyes, then it will take rebirth in one of the higher 3 states of rebirth.
그러니까는 따뜻하게 냐와다 지는 사정부터 또 이다다 지는 제공부터 돈을 이루부터 근데 이제 위를 때가 나중에 아무리 탑도부터 사실은 뭐 보통부터 이제 영화 쭉
If the consciousness takes rebirth in a hell realm, it will have to experience the tortures of heat and cold. If it takes rebirth in the Holy Ghost state, it has to experience the tortures of hunger and thirst. If it takes rebirth in the animal realm, it has to experience the sufferings of ignorance and stupidity. If it takes rebirth in the human realm, it has to experience the sufferings of birth and dying and so forth. Birth, aging, sickness, and death. Then, if it takes rebirth in the demigod state, it has to experience the sufferings of fighting and quarreling. If it takes rebirth in the long-life God state, it has to experience the sufferings of falling. That is, when that rebirth ends, it has to fall to a lower realm of existence. So the prayer says, don't take rebirth in any of these 6 suffering states. Try to direct the consciousness out to the crown aperture to a rebirth in the Pure Land of Amitabha. Because if the consciousness goes to the Pure Realm, it will have the possibility, the opportunity to experience not only happiness but benefit for other beings. Through the development of loving kindness and compassion, the opportunities for benefit are very great. So it says that we need to prepare while we're still alive to understand these teachings and to develop loving kindness and compassion for sentient beings in preparation for this important time. And so this is, in brief, a description of the teaching on the transference of consciousness at the time of death. So now if a person has prepared in advance, then these teachings on the preparation for the intermediate state are very beneficial. If a person has not, then what is called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, more properly known as the Tibetan Book of Complete Liberation. Yes. Then this is recited. If a person is doing the transference of consciousness practice, then it is not necessary to recite Book of Great Liberation. So if the consciousness leaves for the Pure Land at the time of death, it leaves through this crown, an actual aperture appears, and it leaves through this aperture. So if a person is going to do this practice of transference of consciousness, they need the assistance of someone who's experienced in the practice, such as a monk or a nun who is very familiar with the practice. And if a person is not doing the transference of consciousness practice, but is reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation, or having it read to them, this is how that will go. there are said to be 6 different intermediate states, what we are referring to as the bardo in Tibetan. The 3 concerned in this life are the bardo of birth, the bardo of samadhi, or meditative concentration, and the bardo of the dream bardo, the intermediate state of dream.
그래서 지바다는 지가바로 아니 지바다 나바다는 춘디바로 두바다는 시가바로 그래서
The 3 concerned with the afterlife are the bardo of death, the bardo of Dhammata, and the bardo of the worldly bardo.
나는 한번 샤부지 시설을 하다 보니 샤부지 그러려면 승만 양념샤리라고 해서 승만 양념샤리 하다 보니 이 당고를 우리는 쇼르시는 맛을 나발을 자와디 맛이라고 해서 자와디 맛은 쇼르시다 우리 쇼마는 우리 남바는 제 식당마다 인지고 있는 것까지가 있는 거예요. 그걸 빠질 까는 그 맛을 그 자꾸 생각한 것들은 좀 그런 거 보면 이해가 못 되고요. 안테나 말은
Now, in the intermediate state, this is after the actual time of death, then there are certain experiences that occur to the person who has died. And these are in certain stages that Lama Rinchen will describe. Now, the first stage, which would occur on the first day after death, is the appearance of a bright sky blue light, and the appearance of a Vairochana Buddha, who through great compassion and loving kindness would come to assist the person to go to the Pure Land, to his Pure Land.
데이터는 대바도 누구지는 넘버원은 잠바는 대바도 누구지는 데이터는
So if a person has faith in these practices and has prepared properly, then through a deep regard and a deep faith, Vairochana out of loving kindness and compassion will appear to assist.
데이터 양도양 맞서 그 센터는 낮에 좀 컴퓨터는 양 박자에는 대양도양 그 가르쳐 주는 시작이라서 그는 대답을 그래서 그 남는 그
So at the same time as this bright blue light appears of Vairochana, there will also appear a soft white light. So if a person is familiarized a great deal in their physical lifetime with delusions, then instead of recognizing the bright light of Vairochana Buddha, instead the consciousness will follow the soft white light and take a rebirth not in the Pure Land of Vairochana, but instead in a long-life God realm.
그러니까 대답은 그냥 못 맞추는 그냥 그러다 참선은 팀 샤프 이바다 그런데 그냥 뭘 세트 그렇게 좀 그렇게 좀 성질 그런데 뭘 세트 시작해서 뭘 세트 그냥 그 자신부터 뜻부터 시작해서 그때 차라리 미국 뭐 내가 지금 그렇게 이 만들었는데 뭘 세트 그냥 거지 그냥
So if one does not recognize Vairochana's help, then at the second stage, there will be another opportunity. At this point, a bright white light will appear. A bright yellow light will appear. A bright white light will appear. and this is the appearance of Vajrasattva. And Vajrasattva has come to assist. At the same time, there will appear a soft gray light. So if the person does not recognize the bright white light of Vajrasattva, but instead follows the soft gray light, due to familiarization with anger in the waking lifetime, then they will instead follow that light and take rebirth in a hell realm.
자꾸 쓴다는 그것이 정신이
So if a person has faith and regard for Vajrasattva, has become familiarized with the form of Vajrasattva and recognizes it at that stage, then the person can take rebirth in a pure land of Vajrasattva. If not, then there occurs a third stage. And so at the third stage, a bright yellow light appears. And this is the appearance of Ratnasambhava, another enlightened being. And if a person recognizes Ratnasambhava, then one can take rebirth in that pure land. If not, there will also simultaneously appear a soft blue light. If a person has a great familiarity with desire in this lifetime, then the tendency is to follow the soft blue light and thereby to take rebirth in a human realm. So the idea is not to follow that, not to go down, but to recognize the bright yellow light of Ratnasambhava and follow that.
그는 다 때가 못 쳐준다더니 저기 한 때가 못 맞춰는 그는 자꾸 막 힘을 집어가지고 맞추는 도관이 있는 그 장소에 힘이 거든요. 못 맞추라고 그래서 때때가 되는 때때가 너무 중요한 나서 되어지는 때가 지금 그래서
If one doesn't recognize that bright light, then one passes to a fourth stage, where a bright red light appears. And this bright red light is Amitabha Buddha. If one recognizes Amitabha Buddha at that stage, then there's the possibility to take birth in the pure land of Amitabha.
때 장소야 그는 그 말고는 근데 장소 지차를 잡아서 때려서는 그냥 이제 숨을 참는 야와다 이다 그래서 그래 이다 같은 지금부터 봐야 돼. 근데 말고는 what's the command of
So simultaneously there will appear a soft yellow light. And if due to the power of familiarity with stinginess in one's lifetime, one follows that soft yellow light instead, there is the danger of taking rebirth in a hungry ghost realm and having to experience these sufferings of hunger and thirst. So one is counseled not to follow that soft yellow light, but instead to follow the bright red light of Amitabha.
때가 좋으면 되게 때가 못 맞추고 지금 자꾸 나발하는데 정신을 들여주가 장구 시작했어요.
So if one recognizes that red light and goes to the pure land of Amitabha, that's very good. But if one doesn't, then one passes to a fifth stage, a fifth opportunity, when a bright green light appears. This bright green light represents Amoga city, another one of the 5 Jnani Buddhas.
근데 그냥 똑똑한 친구, 저지 친구, 시작해서 그냥 지금 때까지 있는 거 지금 수왔다는 거예요. 그냥 그냥 생들에 지나오게 차도게 빠져게 보면 만부지 있는 거예요. 근데랑 만들었더니 똑 친구, 저지 친구들은 때까지 수왔다는 거예요. 그래서 수왔다는 이거
So this bright green light is very lovely. And if one has faith and supplicates, then there is the possibility of going to the Pure Land of Amoga city. If not, simultaneously there appears the soft red light. And if due to imprints of jealousy in one's lifetime, one follows the soft red light, there is a danger of being reborn in the realm of the demigods.
이제 릭만은 자와 릭을 탈 수 있는데 다르다. 그래서 양 때나 맞으면 샤 주바는 이제 바로 컨트롤이 남아서 가서 말하자. 또 마우샤는 엔테를 엄청 똑같이 있는 거예요.
So in this way, the 5 Jnani Buddhas appear to help the dying person. If the dying person has faith and is familiar with these visions, they can assist. If not, one passes to the 6th stage. In the 6th stage, there are various colors, and these represent the dakinis and protectors who will also come to try to help the person going through the bardo.
나한테 있는 걸 마법들 때 차례 장고 지는 거. 그 장고들은 선대라 시랑 때 녹다 하는 말이 온 게. 그 장고 대 박자를 때 던져를 내가 근데 그 장고들 만들어 가지고 마법들 소화가 대가 놓고 있는 엔타 그 figures.
So at this point, 5 variegated colors will appear. And if one has practice and has faith in these protectors, then they can help one on the way through the bardo. If not, simultaneously there appears a soft green light. And if one has familiarized a great deal of ignorance in this lifetime, then there's the danger of taking rebirth in the hell realm. So the practice counsels animal realm. There's the danger of traveling to the animal state of rebirth. So instead of taking rebirth there, one should try to generate faith and supplicate all of these dakinis and protectors represented by the 5 variegated lights.
그는 샤프를 덤발랐더니 자와지고 그 가르스를 만져 보고 마음을 뜯기기 시작했어요. 대신에는 지금 눈으로 빠지는 그런 루아를 좀 만지는 제가 전에 지금 기회를 빠지게 때가면 그 마음 잠보지 않는 루아를 좀 지금 레가와 있는데 이유가 없어요. 그래서 그 잠보를 만져 가지고 또 중독돼서 지금 때 마음을 두고 그래서 때 샤프를
So at the 7th stage, on the 7th day, then again, these 5 variegated lights will appear, all subsumed together, collected together. And again, there is the possibility of asking for the assistance of these protectors and dakinis. And we ask their help in transferring or taking rebirth in a pure land. Rather than having to cycle again and again within the wheel of samsara. So according to the Buddhist, the Tibetan perception of the process of dying and rebirth, actually this process can last as long as 49 days. A series of 7-day periods for a total of 49 days. What he's described today is the experiences of the person in the first 7 days. So just in brief, that is a short description.
We have very little time, but maybe there's 1 or 2 questions. Any questions? Would you please stand up, please?
Vairocana, the soft white light, what's the familiarization that leads you to rebirth in the long life God realm?
Delusion.
Huh?
Delusion.
Illusion? Illusion?
Does this mean because we're all humans now that we have kind of failed and we really need to be learning from our experiences now?
We can't say for sure all of the things we've experienced so far, but we do know that we have to prepare for the future and do well in this rebirth in order to ensure a positive future return.
Would it be best to stop, to go right into the blue, bright blue light and take a stop there, or is it best to go through the whole, wait for the last choice?
Yes, if we recognize that bright blue light and follow it, we won't have to go through the rest of the stages. But if we do the practice of Hoa, the transference of consciousness, go directly to the Pure Land, we also will not have to go through these 7 stages with Vairochana, etc.
I think before we all become hungry ghosts, I think we should cut off.
I have got 3 announcements. One, I think you all have a single white sheet, which is the evaluation form, and during the lunch break, if you could fill that out and leave a copy on the table outside. Secondly, for those who are enrolled in the class, the 491 class, the summer session, we will meet in 15 minutes at 12:15, maybe 12:20, I guess, 12:20 in the room 101. It's just to the right of the entrance. We'll meet in 15 minutes for a 30-minute get-together. And the third announcement you're all been waiting for, the lunches have arrived. Thank you very much. See you at 1 o'clock.
I'm going to go eat. Huh? One here. I'm a student. Where can we see this video? Well, I don't know. You have to ask this person from the video facility. She's wearing a white shirt, but she'll come back.